I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
The real story is not the marketing agency my next guest founded and grew. It's actually the remarkable journey of creating a culture where individuals feel valued and leading a team prioritizing emotional safety. This culture uniquely blossomed within a marketing agency, but it could have been any company, even yours, attracting numerous like-minded organizations to collaborate with WG Content. One of the many highlights in my conversation with my guest is her innovative approach of reframing resilience as life-work balance, a subtle yet powerful shift. Another standout initiative is the Best of Me worksheet, sparking conversations where employees articulate when they shine brightest, when they struggle, and the support they require. Additionally, she mentioned what she calls the You Matter form, which goes beyond mere numbers, acknowledging the entirety of an employee's compensation while emphasizing their intrinsic value to the organization. It begins with a heartfelt message. Numbers alone cannot capture the depth of our appreciation for you. They quantify only a fraction of your value. Christy Pretzinger is the owner of WriterGirl and has transformed the landscape of healthcare content creation. She has built an industry-leading company that delivers superior content and strategy to healthcare brands across the country. And along the way, she has also changed what it means to work as a growing agency. She is a popular guest speaker for both organizations and podcasts, always ready to guide audiences on how to grow leaders and build inclusive cultures. Christy has always been intentional about building her business based on a culture of kindness. Christy Pretzinger on the Business of Intuition. Christy, it's great to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I wanted to ask you sort of an open-ended, let's get this ball rolling question.
Okay.
Which is this: what's your secret sauce? Like, what is it that you seem to do really well and you love to do that you know that other people need it as well?
I would say my secret sauce is making people feel very comfortable being open with me. I am a very safe space for people to share vulnerabilities with.
And then tell us a little bit about your agency and how has that secret sauce helped you and your clients?
Okay. Well, we've been around for about 20 years. We just rebranded and the name is WG Content, Strategy and Creation. And we create content currently in the healthcare space for hospitals and businesses that serve hospitals. So we do everything from, infographics and obviously content strategy to long form website content about medical conditions to physician bios and patient stories, all this just a myriad services that we provide in that space. For me, as I was building the business, as I mentioned earlier, I now work on the business as opposed to in the day-to-day of the business. But when I was building it, I actually said to my accountant at the time that if I couldn't build a business based on kindness, I would go back to being a freelance writer, which was what I had been prior. And so that was definitely my intention. But as anyone who's ever built a business knows, you're wearing all the hats. So you're just busy doing all the work. And I was busy doing all the work. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, and we were working with some consultants, and they did a survey of all of the employees to determine what was the core of our business, the thing without which we would not exist. And it came up that it was our culture. And I thought that was really interesting because I think to a lot of leaders that would seem counterintuitive, that your culture isn't necessarily revenue generating or profit generating. But in my experience, it has definitely been. And that was where I came up with the idea for the book, Your Cultural Balance Sheet, because I was talking with some friends who had had successful exits from their businesses. And I was saying, obviously I look at my balance sheet and all my finances, but I tend to focus more on the cultural balance sheet because I look at all of the things that go around the people and their well-being. And I see that actually contributes to the bottom line. There are many ways I can give examples of that, but it contributes to the bottom line as well as to the hidden cost on the balance sheet, which is employee turnover. And we have very little turnover. I think I can count on less than one hand the number of people who have left the organization over the years I've been building, which is about 20 years.
Only 1% is left in 20 years?
Yeah, probably about maybe 5 people.
That's a great stat. I was thinking this with another interviewee a while back, that why do we have the paradigm that people are going to leave in 3 to 5 years anyway? I mean, we've been told that over and over again, that the average lifespan of an employee is what, 3, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we kind of create a mindset and a system by which we expect people to leave, versus what you're sort of saying is, what if we create a mindset and a series of systems that if they end up being the right fit, they could stay here for the rest of their careers? Why not?
Yeah.
It's a great point. So what does the WG stand for in your company name?
Well, it was formerly WriterGirl. And that's what it was for many, many years. But it really didn't fully capture all of the things that we do. But at the same time, there's a lot of brand equity in it. And so we had asked about, 7 or 8 years ago, we had done an informal client survey, like, should we change this name? And they were like, well, it doesn't really capture what you do, but everybody knows it. There's a lot of brand equity there. So we're like, okay, we'll hold on to it. Well, then I would say in the past 3 to 5 years, we've really expanded even more into the strategy area. And that's obviously starts before you do any content development or anything like that. And so we really need to change this name, but we wanted to hold on to some of the legacy because people do refer to us as WG. So we held on to the WG and then just added content, strategy, and creation to more fully define or explain what we actually do.
Understood. Yeah, I got it. WriterGirl. I like it. And I can understand why you'd want to keep it. We've had the same conversation with mission facilitators. We've been around for a long time, and people thought, what does this mission, this facilitators is, are you going on missions?
Right.
But we do have enough brand equity. We decided not to change it. So I want to get to this conversation you had about your cultural scorecard, but you mentioned healthcare. Why has that sort of evolved as one of your niche areas? Was there something about those companies and those cultures that you align to versus, I don't know, another type of vertical of industries, like could be high tech or could be in banking? Why healthcare? Why have you been drawn to that?
Well, it actually kind of happened. I quote the Oracle of Oprah when I say luck is preparation meeting opportunity. So way back in 2009, I think it was. Yeah, right around 2009. I was working a solo practitioner. I had a lot of contractors that I worked with, but it was still just me really building the business. And I had a client in my hometown here in Cincinnati. It was an advertising agency, and they were doing a 1,000-page content management system for an automotive aftermarket supplier. And they needed it to go live on a particular date. And so they asked me to bring a team of writers to this project. I'd never done that before. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that. So I did. And it went really well. Everybody made a lot of money. The client at the ad agency got promoted. And I thought, oh, teams of writers to people, that's a good idea. And then fast forward about, I think, 9 months, a former client had left where she had worked and was now working at a hospital system in a town nearby. And they had 3 hospitals that they were rebranding concurrently. And she said she needed help developing the content for these websites. I didn't know anything about hospitals or healthcare. I mean, zero, zip, nothing. And she was under the impression that they were mostly done. When it came to me, nothing had been done. And within about, a week, I had 35 writers on this project, and it was herding cats and, spinning plates and all those things you can think of that explain chaos. And it was very fast, and I learned a lot very quickly. And that went on probably, that was like a 9-month-long project, probably. And after that, I thought, I told myself the necessary lie that this will be easy. I'll just bring teams of writers to hospitals, right? That's the entrepreneur's necessary lie, because if you really looked at how difficult something is going to be, you'd probably never get out of bed. So you just say, that'll be easy.
Yeah.
So, of course, nobody in my hometown would talk to me. You can't be a prophet in your own hometown. So I went, one of the first places I went to was Columbus, Ohio, to the Ohio State University, and ended up getting some work from them. And then we became, very close with them. We still work with them. We did all sorts of work with them. They were one of our first big clients. And then went to neighboring states and little by little, started hiring people and started building up the business. And now there are some states we don't work in largely because they're healthcare deserts, but we work all over the country with hospitals and healthcare in the healthcare ecosphere now.
Yeah, got it. And as I was telling you before we started the interview, we do a lot of work in healthcare. And you mentioned Phoenix Children's being one of yours. We've worked with them in the past. Great organizations. What is some of the misconceptions that a company has about an external agency like yours that you need to educate them on in order for the partnership to be effective?
Interestingly, what we've come to just recently is that, first of all, when I was doing this, I actually was creating a category, but I didn't know that. And I could only see that in hindsight, because when I started selling this into the hospital industry, started going to conferences and started talking to hospitals, I had to explain what we were by saying what we weren't. For example, I would say we're not like a typical advertising agency where you talk to someone like me who has all of this experience and then we put somebody junior on and you have to train them. All of the people that I'm representing and I'm going to put on your project have 15 to 20 years of deep writing experience. They're very skilled in what they do and all that. So I had to explain that to them. So in retrospect, I was like, oh, that's because I was making something new. I didn't know it. So now, of course, it's been that started probably that would have started around 2010, right around then. And so what happened then is that other people copied it. They saw that, there's this whole company that does nothing but, words for the healthcare industry. And so other people started doing it. That's fine. That's natural. That's normal. But so what we tend to do now when we're talking to a new client, and this just happened with a new client, responding to an RFP and then doing a presentation. One of my salespeople was doing this. And she said she was going to take a whole different approach because there were other vendors. If you were already a vendor for this particular hospital system, you got 25 points towards you already. And there was a total of 100 points for this. So she was like, well, we're already behind the 8 ball. So
exactly.
Something different. Yeah. So she went in and led with basically what it's like to work with WG content. And there's a video that lives on our website that is me talking about, who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Because why we do it is very different than other organizations, because our mission is building relationships one word at a time. And we do that with each other. We do that with our vendors. We do it with our clients, and we help our clients do it with their audiences, whether that's a patient population or a hospital client, whatever it might be. And everything we do is about building relationships, and we are not transactional. So it's a very different approach than other people that are in the same space. And when we survey our clients, we consistently find that the reason they like working with us and continue to work with us is because they enjoy us. They know that we actually want to get to know them. We want to understand the issues they're facing and meeting them in, we don't know the sandbox they play in, but we meet them there and help them the best that we can. We're not one of those vendors that comes in and it's like, you're doing everything wrong. You need to do it this way. We just would never dream of that. We don't know the issues they're facing, but we know that we can help. And that is the thing that has made a vast difference. And in fact, we won that RFP because she approached it. And they actually said, there's a lot of people that can provide content for you, and our processes are probably similar. Our pricing is probably similar. But let me tell you what's different about working with WG content. And one person I think said, well, are you going to, talk about your process or your pricing? And she thought, oh gosh, I'm going to lose this one. And she said, well, that's all in the RFP. You can find everything you need there.
Right.
And then they sent her an email saying you are the awardee for this RFP. So that was a pretty big deal. So that I would say that's our difference, and that's how people choose to work with us.
So it's interesting. It's kind of I don't want to say a double-edged sword, because what you did in that story was describe your secret sauce, if you will, about relationships being the most important part of your work. And yet sometimes the client doesn't see you that way. They see you as a transactional service and want to throw ideas over the fence, and you go implement it from a marketing or content perspective. What you're sort of describing is a relationship that is also about strategy. It's also about, let's really get to the source. of what it is you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it, who your constituents are, and so forth. And I sensed in the work that we do, because we kind of work in parallel sometimes with marketing companies. Sometimes we might work in tandem with them or together with them, is that some companies don't see marketing as a function of strategy. They see it as the execution of strategy. Do you believe that? Is that part of what you in a sense are doing, is finding your way into having a seat at the table?
I don't know that I would say that. I think one of the ththings that we talk about a lot, and this is probably an adjacent conversation, but the fact that we have a for-profit healthcare system in this country is somewhat odd in the world. And so the fact that, and I think it's a little distasteful to talk about marketing hospital services to people. Nobody wants to go to the hospital, right? But chances are good at some point in your life, you will avail yourself of those services. We speak, although we work with marketing departments in hospitals, frequently they're communications and marketing, they are called that. And we also talk more about information sharing, that it's really helping people to equip them with the best information possible so they can make the best healthcare decision for themselves or their loved one. So it's definitely different. We aren't someone who comes in and talks about how to do your ad spend or Google AdWords and things like that. We definitely love having the strategy part, because then we have a seat at the table sooner and can help them, because we really want people to get the most bang for their buck. We don't want them to keep reinventing the wheel. If there's a way that we can help them do something more efficient, then that's in fact what we will do.
Understood. Well, tell me about the book that you're writing. And you mentioned this earlier in our conversation about the cultural scorecard. I remember years ago, the term triple bottom line scorecards became sort of popular. This combination of people, profit, and planet. They all sort of aligned up together, and one was able to affect the other. And it was a new way of looking at the way we measure the success of a business. Tell me about your scorecard and what it's really all about, and how listeners might be able to, maybe use something from it.
Well, it's actually a balance sheet, not a scorecard.
Excuse me, balance sheet. Wrong term.
It's okay. I'm using the language because of a very specific reason, right? Because everybody, if you own a business or you have any financial responsibility, you have to look at some sort of balance sheet at some point in time.
Yeah.
But also, if you look at that, you also know that it captures a moment in time, and the next day, the whole financial picture could be different. So it's a useful tool and a necessary tool, but by no means the only tool to measure the success of a business. And so when I started thinking about the cultural balance sheet just kind of came out of my mouth, and I thought, I wonder if that analogy will work. So I started thinking about it and noodling around with it, and it's definitely different. It's the language of a balance sheet, just for ease of explaining the concept. So of course, you talk about assets, liabilities, and equity, but unlike a financial balance sheet, your assets obviously include your people, your values. There are many other things that are in there, but your liabilities in a cultural balance sheet, if you focus on them, if you give them both attention and intention, you can actually turn those into assets, unlike liabilities on a financial balance sheet. Sometimes let's not get into that, but largely you can take these things. If there are things that you discover are liabilities in your organization, if you do give those some attention, you can turn them into assets. And then the equity of a cultural balance sheet is the culture itself that you have created by focusing on the assets and on the liabilities. And then you create the cultural equity, which is your environment.
So can you give us a preview with respect to what you expect the book to end up looking like? Meaning, would somebody like a balance sheet almost get a score for themselves? Where you would literally see the increase of assets and the decrease of liabilities. How do you quantify that? I guess is really my question. We think about balance sheets from a numerical perspective, right? And I get it. Numbers represent a story of something that's non-numeric, right? But in this case, how do you quantify the health of a culture using this balance sheet approach?
I think that's funny, because I think about, the data scientists who say, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
But I would beg to differ on that.
Yes.
Other than the fact, I would say with a long game, it's not going to be a short game. You're not going to end up being like, oh, look, here's my net income and this is my EBITDA. You're not going to have that with the cultural balance sheet. What you're going to find out is over time. I think that the biggest thing about culture, in my experience, is the soft skills that I think, again, is a misnomer, because the soft skills like empathy, kindness, vulnerability, those things are hard to do. And they require attention and intention over time. And trust is a big one, and trust is a long game. And that contributes to the cultural equity, the circle of safety that people feel. But that doesn't happen overnight, right? You can lose it overnight just by making one mistake. You can just blow the trust that you've spent years building with people. So in my experience, I always share this story. One of my employees who's been here 9 years, when she first came, she had been burned at another organization. They hired her, told her one thing, and then it ended up being another. And fortunately, two of her former coworkers from another organization were working with me, and they both talked with her and was like, no, this is true. It really is this good. You will enjoy it, all this kind of stuff. Of course, she's been here 9 years. She loves it. She wants to retire from here. And she's now she's my EVP of business development. But, it took time. She didn't walk in here trusting all the things that I said. She was like, yeah, right. I've heard that before. Yeah, sure. You give flexibility. I don't believe that. It's flexibility as long as you work 80 hours a week. We don't care when you work it. It's not like that. So in my case, I don't measure it in terms of hard data, other than we have very low employee turnover. We've had clients, I tell this story, it happened a couple of years ago now, but we had a client, we sell large retainers of time to people and they pay it up front and then we work it off. And this was a client a few years back. And there was a new client, when we first started working with them, they kind of really didn't like the work we were doing. They didn't like the team. It was just like, it was not going well. So the PM on our side is a lovely person. And she worked very hard to build a relationship with them. And she did. And we also, of course, whatever, if the work isn't right, we fix it. We fixed that and we solved that. It became they're still a partner. And it probably has been 5 years now. They have been a very long-term good client of ours. And what happened is at the end of their contract, it was up and there was still money left, like $150,000, something like that. And we'd given them time and said, okay, all right, here's what we'll do. If you renew for the same amount or more, we'll carry that over. And they actually said to us, you know what? We were difficult. We changed direction. We didn't respond. We're going to renew our contract, but we're going to let you keep that money we already paid you. And we're going to start from zero. So that was $150,000 to the bottom line. So that's quantifiable.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And that, that's the thing that I see is the relationships that we build with people. There was another one where our business development team kind of played up on a new marketing campaign that a hospital had. And it was something about like, we're right here, I'm right here, something like that. And so what our business development team is, they went out and found the writer and did this like a little presentation. It was like, I'm right here in Cleveland and I'm writing all your physician bios. I'm right here in Florida and I'm writing all of your, service line content, whatever. It was all these kind of things. And the business development person said, and I'm right here building, continuing to build a relationship with your organization, blah, blah, blah. And so she had said to me, so I never really got a response from them on that, but they renewed their contract right after that. And I'm like, there's your response. They renewed the contract right after getting that. So those are the kind of things that I see from really focusing on these relationships. But I will also tell you, for me personally, I feel it's a privilege that I get to feed into the lives of these people. I do use the word love about my employees because one of the definitions of love is wanting the well-being for other people. And I spend a lot of time thinking about the well-being of the people who work here. As a result, they want to stay here. They protect the culture. I mean, I cast the vision for it, but they protect the culture and really work within it and appreciate it. They appreciate the flexibility that they have, that the recognition that they get and all of that. And it just makes my life more worth living, to be honest with you.
That's great. You mentioned flexibility and recognition and love as being part of your culture. Is there any kind of, exercise or idea that you might be able to impart on people who are listening who say, hey, this sounds really great. What could I do tomorrow? I mean, what could I do with this meeting that I've got coming up? You mentioned the circle of safety. Again, your point is 100% so well taken that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes intentionality. But what could somebody do listening to you tomorrow to start that process?
I have two things, and I'll be happy to give you a QR code for both of these documents that people can use right away.
Okay.
One of them, most organizations do some sort of, they'll like give people a total compensation sheet, and in my experience, frequently they do that because they're hearing rumblings about people feeling like they're not being paid enough. And they're kind of like, well, I'll show you how much you're making. So here's your pay, but here's your benefits, and here's your, your insurance and your time off and all the different things. And so here's your total comp.
Yeah.
Well, we do that, but we do it very differently. We call it You Matter. So the document is actually titled You Matter. And then there's a beautifully written paragraph that I wish I could quote by heart, but I can't. And it talks about the fact that we appreciate the fact that you bring your talents and skills and put them to work for WG Content. And in turn, this is what we would like to be able to offer you. And like, while your worth is immeasurable, here's the quantifiable thing that we can do for you. Because we want people to be clear, a position pays so much, your worth as a person is obviously, immeasurable, right? It has nothing to do with money. And then we do just a total comp like anyone would do. But it's the way that we frame it. Because again, in my experience, I know that a basic human need is to know that you matter, that you make a difference, that you are seen, that the things that matter in your life matter to the people around you. And we want people to know that. That's why when I talk about life-work balance intentionally at our organization, it is not work-life balance, it is life-work balance. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to lie or hide the fact that they're going to a doctor appointment or they're taking care of a sick parent or they're doing whatever it is that is their life. We have an environment where we make sure that the thing that somebody knows is that it is absolutely acceptable to prioritize those things. What is not okay is not to tell the people you work with that this is happening so that they can fill in the gaps for you. So you have to be willing to share that information. So anyway, I kind of digress there, but that's the total comp sheet that we call You Matter. There's another one that we use that we do. I think we changed it to twice a year, quarterly, because fortunately we do have a very good culture. This doesn't change all that much, but it's a sheet called The Best of Me. And it's a conversation between a manager and their employee, whoever it is that they manage, and it's one-on-one. And it's a 4-quadrant worksheet. And in the upper left-hand quadrant, it says what you can expect from me, what I'm good at. In the upper right-hand one, it says you get the worst of me when. So that if you get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when. Lower left-hand quadrant says you can count on me to. And then the lower right-hand quadrant, which is the key, is what I need from you is.
Fantastic.
And the reason
I
say that, I know the reason that is the key is that when I was teaching people about this, I'm like, the job of the manager is to listen, first of all. That's really their job, to ask clarifying questions, but to listen and to hold the space for this employee to be vulnerable in this way. That's vulnerable to say, what I need from you is, right? So, but then the thing that afterward, when I talked about trust, if someone tells you what they need from you, and then you don't do it to the best of your ability, you have lost all of the trust that you've built. So that is the important thing. Now, if they ask for something that is simply beyond your ability to give it, then that's a conversation at that time. I need more money or something. And it's like, well, we need to talk about that. But usually it tends to be more around some sort of soft skill. I need more recognition from you, or I need more clarity around, what I'm doing and where I can improve, whatever it is. It tends to be something more like that. And then it gives really a to-do for the manager to further that relationship and to really understand what matters, back to the You Matter, what matters to that employee, and then to acknowledge that.
I love this. I really think this is a great idea. Wonderful stuff. Is that something that you would deploy upon a person's hiring, or would this be referred to, used as a discussion point on a regular basis? And if so, how regular?
Like I said, I think we started quarterly and everybody said that's too often because we don't change in these areas that much here. So now they're doing it twice a year. That's a good idea. I don't know that we've ever done it right when someone has started, but that's a really good idea. In fact, we just added a new employee, which is funny. She was a contractor with us for many years. And then she took a full-time job because her kids were going to college. Now they're done. And she came back. I think it's been 5 years. She came back and she's flipping right back into some clients that she worked with back then, which is lovely. But that's a really good idea to do it right when you start. Because one of the other things we do, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes.
I don't know if your audience is, I won't go into it, but it's a personality typing system. There are many of them, but we use the Enneagram and we do type people when they first join the organization. And the thing that I love about the Enneagram and that fits with our culture is that it doesn't just look at behavior, it looks at motivation for that behavior. Why do you behave the way you do?
Yeah.
And we train people about that. Sometimes we do full day workshops, we do lunch and learns on it. And what we have seen is that once you learn about yourself, then you learn about other people. You realize, oh, this person isn't behaving this way to bother me. This is the way they process information. It's different than me. And so what happens is by using that particular tool in our organization, it lays the groundwork for radical empathy because you're like, oh, I get it. Me personally, I'm a fast processor. I'm a verbal processor and I process quickly. I have a lot of people who are slower processors, my partner being one of them. And he processes much more slowly than I do, which actually is great because that balances me out.
Yes.
And that's great in my employees too. I want to hear what they have to say. So I have to slow down and give them the space to speak.
Yes. So there's not just the empathy of you're different than me, but also there is a shift in one behavior to be able to, in a sense, accommodate another to be able to create that trust. Because I think it comes back to the idea that we were always trained as kids as to treat people the way in which you want to be treated. And right now we're saying, no, wait a minute. How I want to be treated is going to bother the crap out of somebody else because I'm different than you. I want you to treat me. I should treat you the way you want to be treated.
Correct.
And we can
and then you have to figure that one out too, right?
Yes. That's great. That's really cool stuff. I really like this. The last couple of things you just mentioned in particular, the you matter sheet, and then the best of me. And I do think that would be a great idea for you personally is to include that in your onboarding process. In the coaching that I've done over the last some odd 30 years, I always try to tell people are thinking about how you operate for several months as a leader, if you're coming in as a leader, or if you're an employee being hired. Everyone's sort of smelling you out. It's like the new dog in the litter, right? Who is this individual? What upsets them? What makes them work? It's a subconscious wondering that we have about each other. Why don't we just get it out in the open right away? This is what works for me. Right. This is what I need. This is the stuff that trips me up. Great. Wouldn't that just create a more trusting relationship if we had those conversations soon versus let's wait 6 months or 9 months to
absolutely.
Reverse engineer it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Christy, this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation. Tell us more about how people can connect with you and when's this book coming out?
Well, the book's coming out in the fall. And right now, the easiest way to connect with me is either LinkedIn or just go to wgcontent.com and you can find me very easily there. You can also just Google my name and it'll probably give you my phone number. I'm way too easy to find. But I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of this. And again, I will make sure that you have the QR codes to put in the show notes for this too. I'll get those to you right away.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been really nice to get to know you.
I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.